The lids drooped over Fanny's eyes. "Look at me," said Hale. So she tried to lift them again, bravely, and could not. At that he bent his head and kissed Fanny Brandeis in the way a woman wants to be kissed for the first time by the man she loves. It hurt her lips, that kiss, and her teeth, and the back of her neck, and it left her breathless, and set things whirling. When she opened her eyes they shut them at such times he kissed her again, very tenderly this time, and lightly, and reassuringly. She returned that kiss, and strangely enough it was the one that stayed in her memory long, long after the other had faded. "Oh, Clancy, I've made such a mess of it all. Such a miserable mess. The little girl in the red tam was worth 10 of me. I don't see how you can care for me." "You're the most wonderful woman in the world," said Hale, "and the most beautiful and splendid." He must have meant it, for he was looking down at her as he said it, and we know that the skin had been peeled off her nose by the mountain winds and sun, that her lips were cracked and her cheeks rough, and that she was red-eyed and worn-looking. And she must have believed him, for she brought his cheek down to hers with such a sigh of content, though she said, "But are we at all suited to each other?" "Probably not," Hale answered briskly. "That's why we're going to be so terrifically happy. Some day I'll be passing the Singer Building, and I'll glance up at it and think how pitiful it would look next to Long's Peak. And then I'll be off, probably, to these mountains." "Or some day," Fanny returned, "we'll be up here, and I'll remember suddenly how Fifth Avenue looks on a bright afternoon between 4 and 5, and I'll be off, probably, to the Grand Central Station." And then began one of those beautiful and foolish conversations which all lovers have, whose love has been a sure and steady growth. Thus: "When did you first begin to care?" etc. And, "That day we spent at the dunes, and you said so and so. Did you mean this and that?" Albert Edward Cobbins announced his approach by terrific stampings and scufflings, ostensibly for the purpose of ridding his boots of snow. He entered looking casual and very nipped. "You're here for the night," he said. "A regular blizzard. The greatest piece of luck I've had in a month." He busied himself with the ham and eggs and the teapot. "Hungry?" "Not a bit," said Fanny and Hale together. "H'm," said Albert Edward, and broke 6 eggs into the frying pan just the same. After supper they aided Albert Edward in the process of washing up. When everything was tidy he lighted his most malignant pipe and told them seafaring yarns, not necessarily true. Then he knocked the ashes out of his pipe and fell asleep there by the fire, effacing himself as effectually as one of 3 people can in a single room. They talked low-toned murmurings that they seemed to find exquisitely meaningful or witty by turn. Fanny, rubbing a forefinger, his, along her weather-roughened nose, would say, "At least you've seen me at my worst." Or he, mock serious, "I thought I ought to tell you I'm the kind of man who throws wet towels into the laundry hamper." But there was no mirth in Fanny's voice when she said, "Dear, do you think Lasker will give me that job? You know he said, 'When you want a job, come back.' Do you think he meant it?" "Lasker always means it." "But," fearfully and shyly too, "you don't think I may have lost my drawing hand and my seeing eye, do you? As punishment?" "I do not. I think you've just found them for keeps. There wasn't a woman cartoonist in the country, or man either, for that matter, could touch you 2 years ago. In 2 more, I'll just be Fanny Brandeis's husband, that's all." They laughed together at that, so that Albert Edward Cobbins awoke with a start, and tried to look as if he had not been asleep, and failing, smiled benignly and drowsily upon them. End of Chapter 19. End of Fanny Herself, by Edna Ferber.